The London Bridge Sports Medicine Podcast.
Medical news, health, fitness.
With Dr. AJ Seth.
Hi there. Today we talk to Alex, who had a meniscal injury to her knee. She tells us how this was wrongly diagnosed and led to months of poor treatment and pain, really affecting her quality of life, as exercise was a key part of her lifestyle as a busy working professional. We ended up sending her for surgery, and now she's made a full recovery with us and is back to full exercise and enjoying her life. If you feel anything Alex talks about is relevant to you, or you need a clearer diagnosis for your knee pain or any other injury, please do get in touch to see how we can help. So I would like to introduce Alex. Alex, thank you so much for speaking to us. Let's start a bit about yourself. Just tell us about your job, who you are, and just what you do in general life.
Thank you, AJ. So I'm a film producer. I make films for cinema in this country and love what I do. It's very creative, but it's quite sedentary. I work a lot behind my desk and sitting around. So doing exercise has always been really important for me. And it's a big part of my de-stressing. And I've got quite a sort of regular regime where I do at least like 4 or 5 classes a week.
I was going to say, is it almost every day you're exercising, or do you have...
Not every day. I want to have rest days, but I also used to do yoga, which I'm doing again. I do a lot of yoga. So I would do maybe a yin yoga class, which is basically a rest class on, 1 day or something. But I would probably do proper exercise for 4 or 5 days, proper pushing, either cardio or strength. And then a couple more days, one complete rest day, and the other day maybe a yoga class, which is less pushy, less stressful for the body.
How long are your sessions? So I think a lot of listeners will be familiar with that kind of setup. Stressful job. They need the exercise to relax, to de-stress. They want that. They have a sedentary job and they want that intensity throughout their day. How long would a session typically last for?
Usually about 50 minutes up to an hour. My sessions at home are also about 45 minutes. Sometimes I do like a 15-minute add a 10-minute up class to it or something. But yes, they're never longer than an hour. Okay. Except for the yoga, they can be kind of 75 minutes, but you have a whole different vibe about it. You do a bit of meditation or mindfulness with it. So it's a completely different vibe in terms of, but the strength and the kind of cardio intensive sessions are never more than an hour.
Okay. And you feel energized, you feel pumped?
I feel energized, I love it, I need it. I need that feeling of, this job can be stressful. I do a lot of talking on the phone, a lot of talking to my writers and directors in terms of long development sessions on Zoom or we have meetings in town. So it's kind of de-stressing. And when I exercise, it's really like, what I love about it is I can't think about anything else. I only have to think about the next move, getting through it, being completely dead. And then the endorphins, that come afterwards. It's just something, can be quite addictive, I have to say. It can be sort of something like now that I haven't had it with the injury, really missed it. And I feel really good in my body afterwards. I feel energized. I feel tired too, but then it's great if I did a class in the evening, like, at the end of the day, I would do some Barry classes about 6 o'clock, 4:30 or something.
Alex, you mentioned the word addictive.
Yeah.
Would you say you are addicted?
I cannot imagine a life without exercise. I have to definitely say that. I used to go clubbing a lot when I was younger.
Okay, well, brilliant.
I used to, and I feel like
we're still young. It's never too old to go clubbing, I suppose.
I still do go clubbing from time to time when I'm not in this country. I can't make the effort. It's just but I have a house in Ibiza and I like dipping into it from time to time. Yeah. But I think I've replaced my raving with exercise because it feels, particularly something like Barry's. The lights are low. It's the red lights, the music is on, and it feels a bit like you're in a club and you get the same endorphins. Okay. So I think I would admit that there is probably a bit of that, but I I don't ever feel, I mean, sometimes you can hit your nervous system too much when you do too much. Then I know, oh yeah, I have to look, like 4 times Barry's is not a good idea in a week.
So let's go on to the knee then. So this all happened in to the back end of 2020, wasn't it? So tell us how that started to feel and what happened there.
Well, the injury, I mean, going back maybe a little bit further, the injury happened actually like in February 2020. It happened, unfortunately, sprinting. I think it was just bad luck. I think I wasn't pushing it. There was just something that wasn't right. And I think this is what I've learned now through all the work I've done, some unevenness between my legs, and there was definitely something mechanical going on, but generally I think it wasn't about over exercising, for sure not. It just happened.
How did it feel? Like how did it feel
on the injury?
At the time of injury, yeah.
At the time of injury. So it was the week before the injury, I went to Barry's a couple of times and I felt a real tightness on the outside of my knee. And I was really worried about it and it hurt, it was uncomfortable. And I went for a sports massage and it was kind of, to loosen it up and thinking like, oh, maybe. And then I went to Barry's again and suddenly it made pop.
So you felt that, and did you? I mean, Barry's is very loud, but did you hear something?
Yes,
you heard something. Okay,
yes,
wow.
I heard it really clearly. I was sprinting. And it was so annoying because it was the end of the class, literally the last 5 minutes. We were still building up to a sprint, and I'm not like even a fast sprinter. I mean, everyone is half my age in there anyway. It's like keeping up is like quite something. But I just loved it and the energy of it. And yes, it made like a sound and I really heard it and I had to stop immediately. There was no way I could even walk properly. So it was really bad.
So you stopped, and did your knees swell up?
Yes, then I left the class and I was like going in and I left the class and I was at home and my knee blew up. Yes, really big, really big.
So it looked big, fat and swollen.
Big, fat and swollen, and it hurt a lot to put weight on, a lot.
Okay.
So
and how long did that last for? How long did that swelling sort of stay? Were you able to walk in the next couple of days, or did it take a couple of weeks to go down?
I was able to. I have some crutches. I had some crutches at home because I broke my ankle once skiing years ago. So I had to use those to just hold it a bit and put a little bit of weight on. But I could. I mean, after about 2 weeks, I could almost walk normally again. I went straight to physio and also to my GP because I knew, something obviously really bad had happened.
Well, so as in the first few days you went to see the GP, did you?
The next day, literally the next day.
Wow,
next day. It happened on the Sunday. On the Monday, I went to the physio. And they did all these tests because I was immediately worried that it's a meniscus thing. I mean, I'm not, I have no clue about medicine or anything, but I, of course, read about it on the internet. You can access information so easily now. And everything that I was reading about was looking like a meniscal tear. But I didn't have the locking, which is a classic sign for it, apparently. And I went to the physio and she said, she did all these tests. And she said, it's not a meniscus tear. It's a hamstring tear. And then I went to the GP who confirmed that it's a hamstring tear and not a meniscus tear. And then we started physio on it. I probably went to physio twice a week. And it was getting better. I was feeling less pain. I could start walking on it. We strengthened the hamstring, and it was really responding. And
in what way? The swelling went down?
Swelling went down. Pain lessened.
Okay.
Could put weight on again. Was nearly normal gait again.
Okay. We
were doing hamstring exercises that helped somehow. And I was back at Lagri, which is this Pilates, which is quite hardcore. It's a real strength training on the reformer. It's a tough exercise. I was back less than 2 weeks there doing it, and it was fine.
Wow. So within 2 weeks, you were back doing the hardcore Pilates. Okay. So you mentioned this diagnosis of a hamstring injury. Obviously, we found out later on that that wasn't the case, and that was the wrong diagnosis at the time.
Right.
Do you think the GP and the physio, obviously that they're assessing your knee, they're giving their clinical opinion, and every clinician, whether you're a doctor or a physio or another practitioner, you are using your expertise and your knowledge to physically assess, but also listen to your story, right? So do you think the GP may have just been influenced by what the physio had said?
I think so. I mean, the GP was basically not properly looking at it, and was basically just not, well, like, oh yeah, I remember him kind of telling me he didn't even hardly look at it properly. It was like, oh, it's a hamstring tear for sure.
Mm.
And the weird thing is, I personally, throughout this whole 2 weeks, I went to my physio and had this gut feeling that it's something that's a meniscal thing. And I saw another physio, talked to another physio at the same place and said, like, I think there's something worse going on than just a hamstring tear. I feel, there's all these weird symptoms. And my gut feeling, at least 3 times I mentioned it, and they did the tests again and again. And I guess and I said this to you before, I would never make this mistake again and just trust. If I personally, and also in general, I would always go for a scan now. This is just, always go to a specialist and for the scan to just be sure. I'm not blaming anyone. It's like not about, people can get it wrong. And it was true. I was so quickly well again. I was so quickly back at exercise and so quickly able to do things. And personally, I also wanted to believe that it's not a meniscus thing, because I knew a meniscus thing would be much worse to deal with in terms of physio, possibly even having surgery, which ended up being the case and stuff. So I was fighting with myself, but at home I remember, so I always keep researching, looking it up again and thinking, there's something not right. I have those symptoms. And it's just...
I think you've made 2 very good points there, Alex. The first one is trust your instincts, right? So you know your body. Patients know their body better than anyone else, better than any healthcare professional, any expert of the field. They've come in, they've only, they perhaps have only met you once, twice, if not the first time they're meeting you, and they're assessing your body. You were there at the time of injury. You know how it felt. You know what that pop was like. These are your symptoms. So I think there is, if you are being fobbed off is a strong term, but if you are being led down a path that you think perhaps isn't right, of course it's within your opinion to get another opinion and as many opinions as you want. But at the same time, I think if you find a clinician who is listening to what you are saying, and the strongest indicator when I speak to patients, if they say something just doesn't feel right here, that is an alarm bell ringing, saying, you know what, actually, you know your body better than me. Let's just talk about this again. Let's think again. That's the first thing. The second thing you mentioned is sometimes how, when the diagnosis is made in the first instance, how it sticks. So you're made a diagnosis, and that first initial diagnosis you may be carrying that for days, weeks, months, even years without that changing. And that's because healthcare in some respects is a build-up. So it will just add on what we think we know initially. And it's much harder to go and start right from the beginning again when the patient has come to you and they've got this backlog of history. So if you've been given the diagnosis of a hamstring tear, it's very easy, unfortunately, to have that stuck with you and to go on. So, it may have been now, if things had recovered, you still may have been thinking that was a hamstring tear. So that's just important, that actually the diagnosis is right in the first instance. And I think it's definitely worth getting and taking the time to make sure that is correct, whether that's second opinion, whether that's the appropriate imaging, whether that's getting lots of different a doctor's opinion, and I think that's really important. So, okay, so you said you got better, and you were back to it got better to some degree. We got back to the Pilates within 2 weeks. And what happened then after that?
So then I did more physio with the same physiotherapist, and I got better and better and better and stronger. And I slowly built up to running outside again. Slowly in terms of, building up a kilometer, another kilometer. And it felt fine. It absolutely felt fine. It wasn't swelling. I was completely fine. I had no pain. I was pain-free. And it felt fine. And that was coming up to 6 weeks. I went to one Barry's class. I went even back to Barry's. I don't think I was sprinting like crazy. I think I was keeping it low on that, but I was properly running and pushing. And then lockdown happened. And everything shut, including the physio, which was then a big, that was a big, not that happened, why it maybe didn't get to the right diagnosis in the end for such a long time. But basically everything shut and I was on my own completely, because there wasn't even a chance for online physios at that point. I think everything shut down because no one knew what was happening. It was just all crazy. And then at the beginning of lockdown, actually, I was really well. I was getting on really well. And I started, I was like, okay, I'm just going to do loads of running outside and I'm going to build up to a 10K with a really good pace. And I have my Garmin watch and I'm going to do this with a trainer and I'm going to start really training, running 4 times a week and doing sprints on the watch and stuff like this to really get back into running and building my strength again, because I had to have, I did have a 6-week break from the big running for sure with the injury. And by then I was very convinced that it was just a hamstring tear. I'm really well. I wasn't having those doubts anymore because it was completely fine. And then I started doing that and it was fantastic. We had the most best spring. There was no one around on the streets and all this running was amazing. And then I came to week 9, I think 8-9 weeks. I was training properly, strength training at home afterwards with weights. And then running outside, and it was really good. I felt really fit and well. And suddenly something happened. I must have stumbled maybe a little bit, or something happened. And suddenly the knee was blowing up. Huge. No pain. And that went on for about 10 days. And I was like, the swelling wasn't going down.
As big as the first swelling episode?
Not quite.
No.
Not quite. Okay. Not quite. But quite, big, unpleasantly big. I stopped running, took a break, and was like, oh, this is not right and stuff. And it was just not going down. But I had no pain. That was the weird thing. I felt nothing. And then I started online physio with a different physiotherapist. And at the same place, though.
And what, obviously it's swollen again. Were you alarmed?
Yes.
Were you thinking, okay, this is definitely not a hamstring issue?
Yes, I was freaked out. Yeah. By then I was really like, oh my God, maybe there is something much worse. And that the knee blows up. There is something in the knee. I knew there was something in the knee. I always had the feeling there was something in the knee. I started the online class, but again, because no one could examine me physically, we were talking about that maybe it's just something that by going back to training and not having had enough physio to even out the thing, that it's something biomechanical in terms of, movement and not stressing the knee too much now, because my hamstrings and my quads weren't strong enough because of the injury. So we were building that up over online classes. And it got much better and I got much stronger. And again, I thought, okay, this is just something that happened because of weakness. And I wasn't strong enough. And then, unevenness between the 2 legs. And I felt fine again. And I started slowly running again. By then we are in July or something, June, July. And then finally, I could see the physiotherapist who was a brilliant physiotherapist, in person. And he noticed that I couldn't extend my leg fully. And that's when the whole worry started, when he kind of was like, okay.
It clicked. Yeah.
It clicked. And, you know, this is the thing, because of lockdown, I think I was in a doubly difficult situation that, you know, that the first physio sessions were literally like 4 weeks or 5 weeks max. We locked down and no one could see me for months and could see those symptoms. And to be honest, I hadn't noticed. I hadn't noticed. And I went to Ibiza actually in the summer for a week. I got away. And I was lying on a sun lounger. And I was like, it's really tight. I can't straighten my leg. And I remembered that and was really uncomfortable because I couldn't straighten my leg properly. But I remembered it afterwards. But I never really thought, oh, there's something not right. I can't fully extend my leg.
So just for listeners, extend means straighten, or
Straighten,
fully straighten the knee.
Yes.
And Alex mentioned the term locking. So you've already mentioned the term locking. That is the definition of locking. So lots of people are not sure what locking means. They might read that on the internet. But locking means there's a restriction of physical block in movement. Sometimes your knee can get stiff and click, and everyone needs, to some degree, does that. But a true locking of the knee means, for example, as Alex described, you can't fully straighten the knee. And that is a very, very indicative sign of a meniscal injury. So I think your physio this time was right to pick that up. And that's very hard to do virtually, I must admit, right? So when you're trying to assess someone virtually and you're asking about their symptoms, you might turn the camera around and show them a video of your knee, but getting these subtle signs, that's why it's important to get hands on, at least for the initial few clinical assessments, so you can really understand and feel the knee and get an appreciation for that. Okay, so he now we're suspecting something else going on, and then what happened? So we're July sort of time now. We're July.
So we're July, and August. That's when I came to you.
Yeah.
That's when he got the whole thing into motion and was like, there is something not right, and if you can't fully straighten your leg, that is you can't. It's not good for life. It's you need to do something about it, and that's when he referred me to you, really. And that's when, the whole journey started of getting finally sorted.
We had a look and we were like, this is no way been a hamstring tear. And, when I was assessing you, if you've had massive knee swelling, like you described, so if your knee has massively ballooned out, common sense will tell you it's actually something inside the knee, right? Hamstring injuries normally present with bruising and it can do swelling, but usually behind the knee, the hamstring tendons, insertions. But the fact that the knee was so big and swollen and you lost that range of movement was very telling. So we didn't waste any time. We got the MRI scan, and what did the MRI scan show?
Yeah, MRI scan showed that it actually was a kind of a really large tear in the meniscus at the posterior horn at the back. And it was really worse. I mean, for me, the whole thing was, I had to, from sort of coming to not having anything and being fine. And actually at the time when I saw you, my knee was not big. It was completely normal. It looked normal. I could walk normal. I had no pain. I had nothing except that I couldn't fully straighten, which I hadn't even noticed until someone told me, because you're so because it's minimal, that the 5 degrees or 10 degrees. And to then going like, this is such a serious injury that basically if I don't have this done, I would be possibly looking at a knee replacement in a couple of years' time. That was then the diagnosis of the surgeon who you referred me to. And basically with you two, I then you both helped me so much, because it's like I had to make such a huge psychological mental journey of catching up from someone who has never been to hospital, never had any injuries, never had any problems with anything, to Cash called it a catastrophic injury. He kept saying it's a catastrophic injury. It's such a big thing, where basically the entire meniscus was torn at the back and was you couldn't even see. It was away from the knee. And by that time, it was 8 months since the injury actually happened. So it was a long time since, since the meniscus sort of was in the wrong place. And what I really appreciate, he was very straight with me. He wasn't sure whether he could actually fix it, which kind of freaked me out totally at the time, because normally he would do these operations like within 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah. And the meniscus wouldn't have, scrambled up or maybe even dissolved, or, there could have been so many things. He couldn't actually properly see it on the MRI. And he was just like, the success rate, unfortunately, is quite reduced through that length of time. And that was lockdown. And it was freaking me out, but I really appreciated his straightforwardness and
his honesty.
His honesty. And he's a fantastic surgeon. And then having the chance to talk it all through with you and, and also Jack at, the physiotherapist, just helping me through this journey of going from something where I was like, nah, everything is fine. It's just a hamstring. And, people have told me to going, I have to have surgery. If I don't have surgery, I might look at a knee replacement in a couple of years, which wasn't an option for me because I am so active.
It's a knee replacement is completely out of keeping with you, your life, what you like to doing, and going from having an injury to doing Barry's 4 times a week to being told potential knee replacement is an absolute head spinner.
Huge. It was huge.
So let's just you've become a meniscal expert over the past few months.
Right.
But just for the patients who may be listening, the meniscus is a piece of cartilage that sits in the knee and acts as a shock absorber. So the vast majority of time, if you have a meniscal tear, it's a normal process. It's a normal wear and tear process, and it needs a good diagnosis of what type of tear it is. That's the first thing to say, and the second thing is it needs a good rehab program to help alleviate the issues around and the weakness that the tear may cause, but also sometimes injections may be indicated from that point of view. What you had was a very specific type of meniscal tear, where the whole structure of the shock absorber becomes unstable and essentially wobbles around in the knee, causing the knee to be unstable, but also causing an incident of, you get increased risk of wear and tear of the knee joint itself. So it essentially was an unstable knee, which was blocking your movement because that cartilage was wobbling around, floating around. And interestingly, I spoke to a good colleague of ours, Mr. Kass Akhtar, who's our knee surgeon at London Bridge Sports Medicine. And, it's not a common operation to do in someone who is, entering their 50s almost, if you don't mind me saying on air. The important thing here is there is definitely no black or white answer of whether you should have a meniscal operation to correct that. And the decision we made is actually, you are extremely fit and active. You are very, very high level. You could probably put most people in their 20s at their paces. You are wanting a very high function from your knee, and not to do the operation would have been a disservice to you and your health and how you've managed your body over all these years. And as we found out, actually, it was completely the right decision to do, and it's all going really well. So I think that conversation needs to be had by a few different specialists. I would say sports medicine and surgeons are probably the 2 key people who can come at it from all angles. And I'm always trying to advise patients on whether a meniscal operation is required or not, and more often than not, it isn't. But in your case, it was very clear that actually, yes, I think this is the right thing to do, and Kash obviously agreed. So we had the operation. How was that experience for you?
That was, I was freaked out on the day, to be honest, because, Kash had warned me that he might not be successful. So it was very scary, but actually it went well. Yeah. And the operation itself, the whole experience of going to hospital and doing it was very, very good. They took care of me. I felt very comfortable, and it was done in a day thing. I could go home in the afternoon. And it was successful. He could do it. So he, he saved me. I mean, I'm just like, you both saved me. I mean, I'm just so grateful of what I've been, because like you say, that decision, I wasn't in my head. I wasn't there when I came to you, and the whole idea, I wasn't actually, and my physiotherapist recommended me to going to you because you're not someone like who would immediately go like operation, surgery, because I was in my head very much like, I'm not sure if I want surgery. This is crazy.
Well, you've never had it before. You've never had surgery before.
I've never had that.
It's a big deal.
And I knew what it would mean.
Yeah.
So, but as you explained everything, in my case, it was the only option. And I very quickly, as soon as that diagnosis came, I decided to do it. I got strengthened up by my physiotherapist in terms of, making the quad and everything as strong as possible. I had loads of physio before I went into surgery, which was about a 4-week window after that whole thing. And then in October, I had the surgery. The experience itself was great. The first 2 weeks afterwards were horrid, I have to say. I mean, I had, with this surgery, I had to be 6 to 8 weeks non-weight bearing. So I basically couldn't put my foot down. And
that's to protect the tear, which is why we ask patients not to put weight on, is to protect the tear and make sure all that good stitching work that Mr. Akhtar spent the time doing hasn't been wasted. So it may seem extreme, but actually it's just part of the process, unfortunately. Yeah.
Yes, you have to do it. But it's so difficult because you basically can't do anything and you're so dependent. It's very difficult with my partner. I mean, she had to do everything for me, even bringing a glass of water. I was just on the sofa because you're always walking with the crutches. And you can't do anything. You're always holding your foot up. It's physically exhausting. I had to wear a big leg brace to keep my leg straight when I'm walking around. I was able to unlock that brace to get a bit of a bend while I was sitting, so make it a bit more comfortable. But it was all physically really taxing, having a shower, these first 2 weeks were tough. Really tough. I was, the anesthetic, dealing with that. There were so many things unfamiliar to me that were hard to deal with.
And it's obviously important having support at home.
Very important. I mean, I live in a flat where everything is on the
same floor,
on the same level. I was like really lucky. We got a wheelchair. So we could go out. I was 6 weeks in a wheelchair, basically outside. I mean, there were many nice memories now I also have of that time because I really slowed down in my head. I took it easy with work. We went for lovely walks. There were also positive things. I had the physiotherapist, he came around to my house, who helped me so much that I didn't have to go. He came around on a weekly basis, sorted me, helped me with exercise and physio. And I learned a lot throughout that time of having to deal with exactly what I said before, not exercising like crazy, being calm. But I kept a routine up. And I think that's important because I'm so used to, at some point in the day, I do exercise. I kept, whenever, I would kind of just listen to my trainer or whatever, because he was doing these online classes during lockdown there. And I would just do my boring physio at the same time with it, just to have this feeling like
you're involved.
You're alive.
Involved.
I'm involved. Yeah. I'm not completely gone from that life. And I think that sort of routine and discipline have really helped me to keep sort of, sane.
I think you've said something really interesting there, is that you found different outlets, like you were trying sort of mindfulness, meditation, just to get that peace of mind. Yes. So actually what you're doing there is dealing with adversity, and you're trying to think of new innovative ways to recover, to rehab, because exercise for the time being, normal physical walking was out the window. So I think that's a very good example of making a positive experience out of something that is a difficult situation where you're trying to think of alternative methods. Did you concentrate on things like diet and sleep and that sort of stuff at the time?
Not diet, because like I said, I have a pretty healthy diet overall. I eat very well, and it's never been a thing. I was eating less for sure because I was less hungry, because I wasn't doing crazy exercise, but I never had to, do something like eating less because I was worried about weight gain or something. That was not my issue. But, I tried to definitely, get lots of sleep, get lots of fresh air, and try to be as well as I could be in the situation. As was possible, trying to do upper body exercises.
Brilliant.
Using, working on my other leg, doing bridges and all sorts of things to just keep things moving as much as I could, while, I had to be so, not doing anything.
And that's another great point, because most people think when they've had an operation, they've had an injury, they're out. So that means lying in bed rest, just don't do anything. If you were in a elite sports environment or an athlete, you'd be, even disregarding whatever surgery you've had, you'd be making the most of your time elsewhere in terms of rehab, focusing on upper body, like you say, focusing on cardio. There's all different things you can do. So for example, if you're recovering from a knee injury, using a hand bike in the gym is perfect, right? You get that cardio hit. It's actually pretty difficult when you're going high intensity, and you're seated, so there's no reasons why you can't adapt in and around that.
Exactly.
So, okay, so the process is, the healing process for this typical type of tear is quite long, and it's been a long road of rehabilitation, recovery, a few relapses, a few more procedures, and we've obviously had to, drain. Did we drain your knee at any point? No, we didn't drain, actually.
No, we never drained.
So we were thinking about doing that because
because the swelling I started, after 8 weeks, I was allowed to put my foot down and walk with the 2 crutches. And by 9 weeks, I was walking alone. And it was interesting every time. And I feel now every time I was waiting for these dates, when I finally was able to do. And the first 8 weeks were the most difficult for sure, because I was also so freaked out that it could re-tear, because it's very sensitive and that something could happen, that I would fall. And, I always had this. And then when I finally started walking, it was suddenly hurting again. And, I had to work the knee, and you had to kind of get over this thing of you don't need to protect it so much anymore. You need to work it now, because it's not so sensitive. And really my physiotherapist, again, helping me with this of sort of like touching it, being not afraid of it, being able to work it and go like, no, and it hurts, and getting over that next step. So the first couple of weeks, they were quite difficult, because I suddenly had to do something different. It was suddenly hurting, suddenly swelling again. It looked really good after the 8 weeks, and then suddenly it was big again, because I was putting weight on. I was like, oh God, but it's normal. It's completely normal, but it's kind of a bit of a mental thing,
Yeah.
And there is a trauma, there is a trauma about having gone through this sort of a psychological trauma where I was dreaming about it a lot, where you go through something so severe and scary, where you think like, sitting in a wheelchair suddenly and not, having, that was interesting itself, actually, thinking about your able-bodiness and taking it not for granted, and being able to think about what the world looks like from a wheelchair and how that feels, and not taking it for granted now, when I think like, my God, my body can do all these things. I'm so grateful. So it's like, there are good things about this, but it is, definitely a trauma where I feel like I go back to moments and, I relive them, and they come back, because it was a huge thing for me. And I think a lot of people would probably feel that if you haven't gone through anything like that before. And
I think it's important to get the right support, either at home or more formally, if you feel actually, exactly like you say, I mean, the term PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, most of the time we think about it's familiar with people in the army who have experienced visual trauma, but actually it could be from a surgery, it could be from a change in life circumstance that is out of the ordinary for you. So actually, if you feel that it's getting your mental health down, if patients feel that the stress levels, anxiety levels, or like you say, you know, it's affecting sleep quality, I think that's the time where you should be saying, you know, I need a bit of support with this, and you know, either just talking to a doctor about it, or more formally via counselling and so on and so forth. I think that's really important.
But I felt like I had the team, you know, with you and Cash, who I was in touch with, and my physiotherapist. I had the three of you were really, I felt so protected throughout this journey. I have to say, it's been a really good experience.
And we were corresponding a lot by email, wasn't it? And I think those emails, conversations.
I thought there was great correspondence between you. Everyone knew everything. I never felt like you didn't care. There was always, you always knew everything, the information about it from each other. And it was a real sort of team approach where I felt like, and also I love the ambition, particularly from you, getting me back into proper sports, you know, and really pushing that, and not just going like, okay, you know, it doesn't hurt so much anymore, we can kind of take it easy. But I want to get back to running, I want to get back to sprinting, I want to go to Paris if I feel like it. It's not my highest priority right now, to be honest. My head's slightly moved somewhere else, but I want to go back out to running, and I'd like to have the confidence to get back to Paris if I wanted to, you know, sprinting, and to really push this, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And these are your ambitions. They're not, you know, you said I was ambitious. These are your ambitions. And actually,
these are my ambitions for sure. But you're really helping me, you know.
Yeah, and it's important to realize that. So it's important to realize what patients want from themselves, you know. And for you, that's why the context of your lifestyle is so important, because actually that is important, whether it's raving or whether it's, you know, whether it's Barry's. We want you on your knees. We want you physically active, and that should be, you shouldn't expect any less, to be honest. So tell us where we are now, what the next steps are.
Yeah, so I've just done 6 months since surgery.
Which is a long time. It's a
long time. You know, again, a big step was after 3 months, when the sort of highest danger zone is over and you can start pushing a bit more. That's when I started strength training properly again with weights.
Yeah.
Again, that was sort of a bit of a moment where I was like, oh God, it's really tough. It's really hurting. I really have to push. I don't want to do this. Where you have to, again, a mental blockage, you know, to push more because you need to get stronger. But again, once this settles, the last 2 months have been great. I've been getting stronger and stronger. I've added some extra physiotherapy where I could, you know, use some gym equipment, because of course we're still in lockdown and it's hard to get to the gyms. And
that's with Ben, isn't it? I'll put Ben and Cash's links below just for everyone.
Yeah, that's Ben, exactly. He's been great. And I've also been continuing with Kendall at 10. So I have, you know, a good regime now of doing physio a couple of times a week and doing my own strength training at home. I've before, just after Christmas, when I was my 3 months thing, I hired a bike, an indoor cycle bike. So I started biking at home to get my cardio back up. And that's something I'm allowed to do now, you know, was then. So that's been helping me a lot, and was the best decision I made because of lockdown and gyms being closed. I'm so, you know, it's good to have done that. And basically now I've been signed off by Cash, actually on last Monday. And I can do what I want, basically, except we have to, so it's been great. My knee looks great. My strength is almost even between the two legs.
And we've been testing that all throughout, haven't we? Making sure there isn't any. So post-operatively, one leg was like a chicken leg, to be honest, wasn't it? And the other was nice and developed. And now we've slowly, but it's important that we are measuring those values and we're understanding. So that's where the objective markers, we call it. So we know the numbers. Okay, and that's good. So almost equal.
Almost equal. Yeah, it was scary how 6 weeks not walking just wastes away so quickly. It really surprised me, and it takes a long time to build up. I also had these sort of muscle stimulators for a while to kind of help me with while I wasn't using it. So that was really good. But now we are almost there from the strength. I could actually start running, but I need to have a sort of progressive regime of now getting back into running. I wasn't allowed any jumping, so no plyometrics, which is like jumping around and proper impact on the knee. I wasn't allowed to bend more than 90, so now I can do deep squats. And in about 4 to 6 weeks now, we are progressively kind of building up to running again. And then hopefully I'll be done with it all, and I can go on my life.
And I'm sure that will be the case. And the reason I'm confident of that is because you've just said the golden words, a progressive return to running, right? So another risk factor that patients need to be aware of is the green light does not mean full steam ahead. If the surgeon said to you, okay, yes, you can go and do whatever you want now, that definitely does not mean go out and start running half marathons on your first day. That means that the rehab continues, and that's a slow and progressive build up to activity, to jumping, and that itself is a whole stage of rehab. So yeah, you can almost call that the final stages of rehab, and that's why we've made it so clear that for you that physio input and that rehab input from all of us will just keep going until you have that final sign off, which is back to Barry's.
Yeah. I mean, for me, that is actually been one of the really positive outcomes of this injury, which, it was terrible and really difficult, but there were definitely lots of positive incomes. And the best thing about it was having all this physio. I've had physio for 9 months now, and I will continue. I'm lucky enough that my health insurance pays, and maybe not everyone is that lucky enough, but I cannot recommend, physio, good physio along that journey has made the difference for me, because I've learned so much about my body. I've learned so much about how to deal with things. I like the analytics of the numbers and understanding. And I think I will be in a better place when I start running now than I have ever been. Because it's very powerful. And I've talked about it with Ben and now Sean, who's taking over as well. I think I'm now stronger than I was pre-surgery, and I'll maybe not quite there pre-injury, but I will get there almost. And I have a much better technique with things, and I know what I look out for. And it's been so interesting, and I've so enjoyed that, I have to say, in terms of learning about these things and really using it and doing these exercises at home. And I know how to help myself now when I feel a weakness in future, when I'm signed off from physio as well, but I might even continue, like once a month, I might check in with Sean or whatever, and see what I can do, and kind of just to be sure that things are right, because I think this is probably what led to the injury, some sort of imbalance, some sort of not quite right. There was the tightness and all that. And I think that gives me also just the confidence, the psychological confidence, to do and push and be as normal as I was, not thinking of anything. I don't want to think, I don't want to be scared, I want to go back skiing. I want to go back, I want to do all the things I used to do. So I think it's a really great experience.
And that's good. What would be, just to sum up then, Alex, what would be your one piece of advice to listeners who either been diagnosed with a meniscal injury or knee injury, or suspect they may have something? What would be your one learning point throughout this whole journey? You've mentioned so many, but what would be your really main message?
I think the most important thing is really, and I say something will never happen to me again, trust your gut instinct. Like you said before, you know your body best, and get some proper professional specialist advice, like go to a person like yourself, where you actually get properly diagnosed and you know what you're talking about, and you get a scan or a sonograph or whatever, where you really get to the bottom of what's going on, and not go along with, when you're not sure. And, it can happen all the time, and no one is to blame. But I think when there's something not quite right, get a second opinion, go to a specialist, keep searching before you're not sure. And the other thing I would say is, like, don't give up on being sort of this ill person and kind of lie in bed and be like, I'm now this injured person, and you can't do anything, because it's not true. You can do a lot. I couldn't imagine, I could not believe how much you can build with physio and exercise with physio, and you feel you've worked hard. And for me, someone like who goes to Barry's and waits and runs and stuff like this, suddenly having to do like strange little things that feel really annoying at times, but they're very effective. It's really good, and keeping a routine, is so important. So that really helped me.
Alex, thank you so much. That has been really, really insightful, and you are definitely an extraordinary patient of ours. So it's been a pleasure working, and I'm sure we'll continue to get you to where you need to be.
Thank you so much, you too. Thanks for everything.
Thank you for listening to LBSM's Extraordinary Patient Stories. We really hope you enjoyed listening. If any of the topics discussed are relevant to you, or you want to find out more, please get in touch by phone, email, social media, or visit our website. Thanks again, and see you soon. Thank you for listening to LBSM's Extraordinary Patient Stories. We really hope you enjoyed listening. If any of the topics discussed are relevant to you, or you want to find out more, please get in touch by phone, email, social media, or visit our website. Thanks again, and see you soon.